Labour leader Keir Starmer says boys would be taught how to respect women and girls as part of the national curriculum in his plans to prevent misogyny and violence against women.
Does putting the responsibility on boys create a blame culture, though, and perhaps even drive them towards extremist views, like those shared online by the disgraced social media personality Andrew Tate, who has been criticised for spreading misogynistic content?
So we're joined now by two parents of boys, podcast host Marvyn Harrison, who backs the idea, saying that the socialisation of boys must begin in school, and relationship expert Fahima Mohamed, who says she's worried it's singling out boys. You think school is not the right place to help boys to respect girls and women?
I think that kind of education starts at home. And parents need to take more responsibility for that. And if you understand how the minds work of young boys, they actually learn basically in sort of like, not words, but by mirroring, which is most children anyway. And a lot of the behaviours that do roll out into schools starts from the home. And I think these sort of policies are not being actually sort of researched enough to know that parenting skills needs to be more in there than the schools itself. And I think schools are going to just single out boys, automatically thinking that they are the perpetrators. And there's so many different characteristics within boys themselves that they're going to believe that that's how they are born, and they're going to be taught in a particular way, thinking that they're already in that sort of natural way of being, which they are not. So it's worrying.
But we do hear from teachers all the time that things have changed in schools compared to 10, 20 years ago, that the attitudes boys are often taking to girls, to photos on social media, is becoming more problematic year by year by year. Is it really not partly schools' responsibility too?
It is a school's responsibility as well, but I think it should not just be for boys, it should be for girls as well. Because at the end of the day, I have my boys telling me all the time that when they see even girls hitting and punching, they don't have the same sort of like, you know, circumstances and repercussions to them, because they are girls and they are seen to be in that way.
Education. So the idea of like, if you are a boy hitting a boy and a girl hitting a girl is a different form of education and understanding of how we need to all coexist. So the reality is that trying to teach men specifically is more important and it's more urgent than it is necessarily just important. And the fact is, domestic violence data shows that it's a crime perpetuated by men more than women.
But the statistics are getting closer and closer.
We still haven't found a real answer for the generational shift. We are not in the World War II era anymore, where we need these hardened men who are silent and move around and provide and protect. We need a more evolved man in this particular time.
Marvyn,
we do not have
what
them.
Fahim is suggesting is that we're sort of creating two cultures here. There's a victim culture where girls are always victims, whereas actually, as we know, girls can also be perpetrators.
Absolutely.
And then there's a blame culture, a criminalised culture, where we're basically saying to boys, you're all potential criminals unless we teach you not to be.
The work is bigger than that. So it's more important for us to look at men and actually look at the outcomes of men. And us being disconnected from our families, us only focusing on making money and protecting and providing, has left us alienated from wider society. We do not participate in the central society in the same way that women do. And so it's important for us to have real connections, real bonds with people.
But that sounds like a family problem. That doesn't sound like a
societal
problem.
Because even my son, who's 7 years old, came back to me, and in our house, we have complete equity in our house, and he still came back and said, boys are better than girls. Where did that come from? And so for me, I'm saying as a wider societal issue, every touch point needs to do their part to raise the tide for young boys, because it isn't working for them.
But behaviours are learned through the family sort of
and beyond.
unit.
Media
and
also.
Afterwards, it goes to that. But at the very beginning, from 0 to 7, they are actually programmed.
What happens beyond 7?
Of course.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying, after 7 as well, it's still, a lot of the children, they are mimicking what's happening in the household.
No, the gaze from young men moves away from the family after 7 into their own peer groups.
Only because they don't have the actual parents.
It's a societal shift. It's a natural shift away from your parental group into your nucleus group and other coaches and other mentors. That group needs to be able to educate young men also, and doing it in a formal space is really important.
So what if then, after the age of 7 or later, as we know, as you say, they're more impacted by other people, what happens if the teacher basically says, there's a divide in this class between the girls, who are likely to be victims, when we know that's true, but you boys, if we don't teach you the right thing, you're going to be the one
singling them out.
No, but, the urgency is important. And I think if you speak to anyone that's experienced those things, they will tell you also that it's important and it's urgent. And the idea that we're going to speak to men and be like, you're bad people, and women, you are amazing, is absurd. Each gender needs its own understanding, its own coaching and evolution from where it currently is. But this freedom that we have for women to be astronauts, prime ministers, also to stay at home and work, doesn't apply to men. So it's like, if you are not of value in the workplace, you are nothing. And that continual message creates this toxic environment that we're all trying to move away from. Andrew Tate was created by all of us. Don't make him out as if he's like an isolated thing. There are many people who have those really strong beliefs about what men should be and what women should be, and it's created a problem that we're all now trying to deal with.
But Fahima, what happens if, in your home environment as a boy, you haven't had those messages, you haven't had those messages from your parents? Surely school is the place where we can try and reset the balance. And we know now, compared to 10, 20 years ago, there's a much more accepted culture, for example, of boys expecting girls in their teenage years to send them nude photos, sometimes to pass copies of those amongst their friends. Surely in school, where a lot of that social communication is happening, isn't that the place to make sure, even if parents should have done it, that we now make sure that we tackle that toxic culture?
Then it should be for both genders.
Of course, well, I agree.
It should be definitely
what would that
for
look
both
like?
genders.
What are you teaching women about women? What are you teaching them?
Because at the end of the day, they are also...
The school should be teaching boys.
They should be teaching... They should be taught at home, and I think programs should be more
well?
about how to be successful, skilled parents.
But if they haven't had those messages from home...
If they haven't had those messages at home, then at the end of the day, there should be still workshops that is there for equal boys and girls.
That's about universal etiquette in terms of how we treat each other, and that should exist no matter what. But specifically around the subject of misogyny and misogynoir, it's really important that there is dedicated education for boys about how to interact and what the impact is of those things.
To be honest, teachers are not geared up for that. They are not respected themselves in the schools, so they have to be taught.
That's a completely different issue.
But even still, you're talking about respect.
No, the question is, should they actually do the education? And the answer is yes. Are they equipped to currently do the education? Maybe not, but then let's get them being equipped and then actually make sure. But
I don't think it's going to make much difference, because if they're going to be singled out, it's actually going to be.
Well, the current phase is not working, so this is the only change that is available.
I just wonder whether I'm just imagining myself back at school and being told there is a misogyny lesson or a consent lesson. And I wonder if there's a danger. I mean, apart from the fact I can imagine teachers screaming at the television, we're struggling to teach the stuff we should be teaching anyway, let alone adding in something else into the national curriculum. But whether there's a danger that these are kind of dismissed as lessons you need to learn, rather than just raising the whole standard of behaviour, as you suggest, in society and in school. So rather than saying, boys, right, now it's time for your consent lesson, we're going to teach you how to treat women properly, just teach them how to treat women.
Humans.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't apply because they're not seen as equal in the eyes of people. And the whole... It's not even just about school.
Who doesn't see them as equal in that way?
Because the conversation... Because it's a generational thing. We are very clear that there's inequities between men and women. And so it's really important that that conversation has been going on from James Bond all the way to now. So what it's really important to be doing is focusing on the specific areas. Otherwise, it's like, let's get rid of anti-racism training because we're all just raising everybody to be equal. It doesn't work like that. Superiority is a strong fundamental belief, and in masculinity it happens more, and competitiveness leads to I am better than you. If they believe that they're better than women and they don't need to respect them, don't need to pay attention or listen to them, it creates bigger inequities and violence against women. It's not generalising, it's happening.
Yes,
the evidence is there.
The evidence is there as well, because I do actually go into schools and volunteer from primary to secondary schools. I've worked in sort of education of learning human behaviour from an early age, with also 7 years experience and doing my master's in psychology and neuroscience. The way in which children are developed, the way in which they learn, the way in which they influence, it is not just the way you think, it's also genetics, it's environment, yes, but the way they are taught and who they look up to.
That's a complete lack of accountability. I work with men and I listen to men of all ages, and they tell me exactly how they feel about the world that they live in now,
and they are also the ones that are being now abused more, as well as just as much as women, and the statistics are getting closer and closer, and we're not even addressing that.
I'm so sorry to bring the very important discussion to a close, but we do have the Home Secretary standing by.